Hey guys, I'm just about ready to finally wrap up this Brunswick 5KR project. The lacquer's been curing up for a couple weeks, and I have temporarily put the chassis inside to see how things line up. I do have to push this back a little bit further somehow. This is the tuning capacitor, because it does rub against the bezel. I can try loosening up this whole tuning capacitor and maybe push it back, or maybe the whole chassis back. I have cleaned up and remounted the original hardware that came with this. I'll show you why in a moment. And something I'd completely forgotten about is that there's a back to this radio, which I haven't done any work with it, or hadn't done any work to it rather. There's some veneer separation, so I've been taking some wood glue and diluting it slightly, working it in there with a stiff brush, and then clamping it down. I've got a little bit more work to do. And then my plan is to use some clear acrylic spray paint over the label to preserve it, and then spray the whole thing with some walnut toner and then like a satin lacquer to make it kind of a dull finish like it originally had. Here's the original escutcheon, cleaned up a bit, and this dark brown color is what the original color was. And then we got a bit of greenish corrosion here and there, and it turns out that is because this is copper. And I was dead wrong earlier when I thought that this was brass plating over copper. It's exactly the opposite. This is brass with copper plating, and it's really just on this surface for a good reason. It's because if you use this old-fashioned formula called liver of sulfur, it does a fantastic job of instantly antiquing copper. I took a penny, a fairly new one, and polished it up good, and then applied a little bit of diluted liver of sulfur, and it immediately became this really nice, rich, dark brown color. And that's the key. You've got to have really clean copper. I tried using it on this piece, and it came out really splotchy and horrible looking. So what I need to do is get this as clean as I can and apply this. For now, I've actually put the originals back on there. These are the two of the newer cleaned up ones. It did work a lot better on the escutcheon though. So here's the new escutcheon I got when I used the liver of sulfur. There were a couple spots, I guess, where I didn't clean well, or I think in some cases the copper plating is worn through to the base brass, and this stuff does nothing to brass. Although there are other treatments you can use on brass, like vinegar, for example. Same up here. So I'm still working at it, but it looks promising. Now, something else I've been waiting for is for a little package to arrive in the mail, and it finally has. The dial scale on here is in pretty miserable condition. It had gotten whacked here, there's a dimple in it, and in some areas the numbers are completely worn off and it's tarnished. Well, I found out that a website called The Radiola Guy has reproductions available. And it's really, really nice. I will carefully take this out in a moment and show it to you. And while looking for that, I also discovered that he has reproduction speaker cord, and this is in, or I should say it's remarkably close to the original stuff. Very happy with it. This wire I used is really just an old line cord. It's much too thick and heavy compared to the original stuff. Whereas this, I compared this to the fragments I had originally left in the Brunswick speaker, and I actually have an RCA 100A speaker as well that has the original cord, and this is very, very similar. One of the key things is that it's very flexible. There's actually a pretty thin wire inside here. Because it's a high impedance speaker, it doesn't need to carry a whole lot of current, and it's got the lugs that are very similar to the original, and it's very nice cloth covering. Very nice cloth covering on the wire too. Here's the reproduction dial scale. It's heavy cardstock that's got a type of gold foil on one side and then it's been printed on. Looks fantastic, I think. I didn't know you could use this technique. Other dial scale reproductions I've seen have been done on plastic, like black plastic with printing on them. So I think this will look really sweet on there. Alright, I finally got the chassis remounted and now I'm putting everything back together. Got the hinges reattached up here, ready for the top to go back on. And right now I just finished off reinstalling these plates up front. There's a new dial, reproduction dial on the foil paper. I think it looks pretty good. And there's a little light bulb sticking out. Someday I may get really lucky and actually find the real hood that should go there. Otherwise, I'm going to try to fabricate some out of some brass. My thought was that maybe I could find some type of ornamental brass, like from a Christmas ornament or something. Something that's vaguely in a spherical shape, and maybe do a little bit of trimming and get something that'll fit on there. Otherwise, all that's left is to put the tubes back in and reattach the back and reattach the top. But before I put the top or back on, I want to power this up and make sure it's still working properly. I gave up on trying to find a good set of globe tubes. So other than the 71A output tube, they're all ST types. I cherry picked out the best ones I had, cleaned them up good, and stuck them in the sockets. The 71A is a globe because I actually don't have any ST style 71As. And as you can probably hear, the radio is still working just fine. I'm actually using an RCA speaker right now. Before I scored that Brunswick speaker I showed in the earlier videos, I actually got this RCA speaker. And now I don't actually have a use for it, so maybe I'll end up selling it. But I wanted to hook it up to actually see how well it works, and to my ear it sounds identical to the Brunswick, which isn't surprising because when you look inside, what you actually find is that the speaker, I don't know if you guys can see in there, but the speaker inside is actually identical to the one that's inside the Brunswick. Same speaker, just a different housing. Here it is from the back side. I temporarily installed the back to see how it would fit. And it fits fine. The only thing I don't like is the way the power cord gets kind of pinched down here. But that's just the way they designed it. Maybe initially these sets were predominantly battery powered, and when they came out with the AC version they used the same template for the back. I don't know, but you can see there's the hole where the power cord comes out, and if they just extended this arch over a bit, it wouldn't be a problem. Oh well, there's enough clearance there, it's not a big deal, it's not really crushing it or anything. Otherwise, yeah, fits on just fine. And the coating I put on the label came out just fine. It's protecting it nicely. And finally, here it is all back together, hooked up to the Brunswick speaker. It's playing just fine.
Very disappointed if Michigan State doesn't win this game, Fred. On Boise State, you mentioned not only don't they have Kellen Moore, who was the winningest all-time quarterback in FBS history, but you lose to the perfect width for you.
Now, the only problem is that there's not a whole lot to listen to on the radio these days. It's pretty much just all talk and sports.
Thank you, Terrence, for that great. Legionnaire's disease, an illness the victims apparently contracted.
But it just so happens that in the mail today arrived the SS Tran AMT 3000 low power AM broadcast kit. So I'm going to dig into this tonight. I don't know if I'll finish it tonight, but I certainly will this weekend. And then let's try listening to this radio with some actual music. But for now, that's going to wrap up this restoration series on a Brunswick 5KR. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Regarding that rumor, I think you would characterize it correct. In South Holland, Homewood, Tinley Park, Frankfurt, Beecher.
The 1-1. It hit him. Beckham got a right in the wrist. Turned right into the pitch.